Hello, friends. Welcome to our segment, Declutter Your Life. And we are in week 4, and actually the last segment. And I am Mari Perez, and
Maritza Ortega.
Today we will be presenting to you how clutter impacts your time and your finances or your financial freedom. And the idea is that not only that we present how it impacts, but also we share with you some tips that might be useful to you.
And so, Mari, let me ask you a question. So, we are talking about the finances and time, but what are the other areas that clutter impacts? How clutter impacts other areas of our life? What are those areas?
Yeah, that's a good point, Maritza, because we probably have viewers who have not seen the other segments, and I was taking for granted that you have seen them all.
Yes.
The idea was to present that we produce results in 4 areas of our life, and in those 4 areas, clutter in a way impacts our life. For example, the first segment was dedicated to how clutter impacts our health and well-being.
Mm-hmm.
Then we spoke about the relationships and how clutter impacts them in a negative way. And then we spoke about how clutter impacts productivity and our ability to be creative.
And then this week we're talking about time and money.
Yes.
How clutter affects. That's my favorite. One of my favorites.
That's okay. So we're gonna have a very interesting conversation today, and that actually is a good point to ask you, Maritza. How in your job as a stager, and when you go and do your job, how do you see that clutter impacts our time?
Mari, that is a question that I would like to answer with 3 different areas or topics. First, it impacts on how long or how much time it takes us to clean when we have clutter. When we have all these belongings, collectibles, items, we have to clean them all if we want to live in a clean house. Sometimes we have these built-ins that are full of accessories and memories from trips and moments in our lives, and guess what, we have to clean them, because if we don't, then they get dusty and they're not as pretty. So that's going to take a lot of time. If the more things we have, the longer it will take for us to clean. Number 2, it's going to take time to get all those things organized. Sometimes it's easy for us to start bringing things in and bringing or buying, and then we end up taking a lot of the living space. We lose living space, or in this case, the important thing is that we're losing square footage and living space. Instead of having a big and spacious room, we end up taking floor space by adding more furniture to place those smaller items. Or maybe I have seen cases in which we just start taking the floor area with pots, pans, bottles, boxes, because then we start accumulating a lot and losing that living space. Many times I see people saying we need more space, and yes, it is true, because then it's all those things that we don't have any more space to put them, so we end up needing more space.
And the space costs money, right?
Absolutely, yes.
And now that we're like in tax season, a space, a square footage even has a cost, and we pay even taxes for it.
And even a bigger house will obviously cost more money than a smaller house. So that is a way in which it impacts our time and the time it takes us to clean and to organize. Now, the third thing is the time that it takes us to find things. Sometimes because we have so many things, it's easy for us to not knowing where we put our keys or our wallet, and then among all those piles of furniture and belongings and boxes, then it's hard for us to find those things that we have misplaced. Instead of just being able to find them quickly, we take I know someone that takes sometimes about an hour looking for her keys every time they are misplaced, because it's not something that is easily found among mountains and mountains of pieces around a room. So it takes a lot of our time that we could be doing something else, time that we end up running late, time that we end up wasting because we are looking for something. If I want to wear this very specific blouse, but I have so many clothes or so many things in my closet that I cannot find that piece of clothing that I want to wear, it's going to end up in frustration, but I'm also going to be running late because it's going to take some of my time. So less is more. It means more time, more square footage, and more freedom.
And what recommendations can you give our friends who are following us about, how do you get out of those situations where you have too much that it takes time for you to manage?
Well, and one more thing, sometimes all these things that we are accumulating, it's going to take us time in sorting them as well. But to answer your question, Mari, I would like to say that I am a big believer of reusing, reducing, and recycling. So what I personally do and recommend every time I come and address a house is to find a new home for those items that we no longer need. Find another person that might be in need of those items. For example, clothes that the kids no longer wear, toys, books that we already read, and maybe they were not as good as we thought, or they're not our favorites. Sometimes furniture that we no longer need. There are a lot of people out there needing things. Remember last year, it was last year when Harvey hit, how many people were in need of clothing and furniture and toys? So there is always someone out there that can be blessed with the things that we no longer need or no longer want. Sometimes we already have duplicates of things. Sometimes there are things that we're no longer using and we're just not taking the time to say, okay, I no longer want or use this, I'm going to give it away. I personally do that, and there is this one place in our community where they accept all donations, all things that people no longer want, and they have a resale shop. But it's not just a resale shop, it's a resale shop it's a non-profit that helps the community. It helps the school district and kids with backpacks or paying for after school activities, sometimes even with extra cost of tests or courses that they need to take. So I like to think about the good that I'm going to be making by giving away those things to someone that's going to make a good use of them, and then help someone else or help the community, or find a good use for those things that maybe not so necessary in our household, but they are going to make a huge difference in someone else's life. So that is my recommendation, Mari.
And I think to add to that, Maritza, sometimes we have times of the year where we know this is cleaning time, like spring cleaning. We see a lot of garage sales activities, and we are in this mode of cleaning the home because now it's spring. Now, my idea is that sometimes we accumulate to a faster pace than once a year, and it requires that we're constantly looking around our home and disposing of things or recycling of things. And if we buy an item, decor for the table, what are we going to do with the 3 decors that we bought last season?
And you know what, Mari? That is a very good point, because what we do in our house is just like the way that you do an oil change or change the batteries in your the alarms, the batteries in the alarm system, or your air filters. That's the same way that you have to make maybe an inventory of your home, your closet, maybe your drawers, and clean it maybe twice a year, maybe once every quarter, and then remove all those things that are not needed, because if you wait 20 years it's going to be very stressful. So do it periodically.
And you find out on those houses that are selling where you see all that accumulation for years, right?
Yes, and ends up being very stressful, and people might end up losing money, which brings me to the financial side of how clutter affects, or actually how clutter affects the financial side of in our lives.
Yeah, when you will see a direct relationship there, because the more we buy things, the more we're going to be using funds to buy. Now in this country where it's so easy to buy, and we can get things using our credit, and if we use our credit too much to buy things, we're going to be piling up on debt. If we use our cash that we could be using, cash is king, to buy things. We're really, the question is this the best use of those resources? And when I do my work in life coaching, I work a lot on the area of belief systems and even sometimes habits, because sometimes the habits, which are automatic behaviors that we have, are a reflection of a belief system that is not very much aligned to the life we want to have. And I find sometimes people get into those behaviors of, if we take it to extreme, will be a shopaholic, someone who always have to be buying things. And shop owners know that, because when we are in the line to pay in a store, we see all those items right there available for the impulse and the last minute drive to get something in the car and buy it.
That we don't necessarily need.
We don't need. And they're usually those tiny little objects that you bring home and you're excited about for 10 minutes or so, and then they add the clutter to your home. And sometimes we shop for things to satisfy a need, but it's a need of an emotional nature. Maybe you're feeling lonely. Maybe you are bored. Maybe you have some kind of emptiness inside of you, and you feel like you shopping will satisfy it.
I have heard the term shopping therapy. So tell us about that. Is that really a therapy?
Well, in a society like here, where it's so easy to buy, we bought into this idea that buying things will give us happiness.
But how can we, in this case, when we feel the need to shop to feel better, how can we feel better without having to shop? Are there other things that we can do to fill that gap?
For sure it will be. Well, the first thing is not to make it an automatic response. A lot of the things we do in our day are out of habit. Maybe we're driving and then we see there that store that looks so appealing, and we're going and buy a new blazer, and we get out of the store with 3 bags. Before we get there, because then it's too late, we either have to go and return all the items that we don't need, or we end up not returning and then accumulating more stuff that we don't need. Is to ask ourselves, what is behind this impulse and having? What, at the end of the day, what is going to be the value added that's going to have in me and in my finances? How buying things is going to impact me? Maybe the answer is in other areas. Maybe we just need a friend to go and
to talk to.
Maybe I invite my friend. I go to coffee houses, so maybe we just I buy coffee to my friend and we have a chat, and that feels a need that I have to share my something that's going on in my life. Maybe I invite my kid to go to the movies or doing something. A lot of behaviors are out of loneliness and boredom. And what can we do to do some soul seeking inside to really find what is motivating me behind buying more things, and how those things are making me happy or not, and how they are impacting my finances, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that also brings me to the component of the attachment to things, and that sometimes are related to a scarcity mentality. I have known people who grew up with a lot of scarcity when they were children, and they feel that they have to hold on to things, mm-hmm. because they never know they are going to be able to replace them again, or the feeling that it's never going to be enough. And the reality that is that we live in an abundant universe and there is always enough.
Mm-hmm.
And holding into that stuff give us unhappiness, not happiness. And that's what so my suggestion is, think about if you are spending too much money on buying things, or not necessarily too much, but you are spending money in unnecessary way, to find out what is behind that and see how you can satisfy that. Maybe it's a walk in the park, or going on a bike ride and take some fresh air, journaling, or talking to a friend, spending time with family. Find other ways that will not be necessarily the use of money to accumulate on things.
So tell us, how does accumulating things affect our finances in the area of having to pay for storage or storing those items?
Yes, storing is it's actually a huge business here in the United States. And sometimes it's actually, I was reading that it's a billion business, a billionaire, because sometimes when people don't have enough spaces in their homes, they rent storage space to put additional items. And of course, it's a big business and it's a very lucrative industry. And you drive around and you see more of those storage spaces popping up. Why? Because they're lucrative. So a lot of times we have things that are unnecessary there, and we are paying more for storage than the cost of those items. So this is some food for thought. So I am actually in a situation where I have storage and I need to reduce the content of the storage because it's costing me money. So we, at some point, we have used storage because we are transitioning between one home or the other, or we need to move, or we are in these temporary arrangements, and the storage is a need. Mm-hmm. In some cases, the storage is not a need. It's just there to satisfy the need to have the stuff that we might not need.
And sometimes we have even forgotten what's in that storage, and we don't even want to go through sorting all those things and wanting to and getting rid of them, but we just continue paying because that's something we just want to avoid.
Yeah.
And we're not really using any of those things, needing any of those things, and we don't even want them. That's why we just forget about them and keep paying, but at the end of the day, it's a waste of money.
Yeah, so I think it's really our hope that by presenting this information, we are creating some awareness, because once we become self-aware, we cross like a boundary between being unconscious about some of our behaviors and being more conscious, and that allows us to make a more educated decisions. And this is what it's all about.
Yes.
It's about making better decisions.
Yes. And one more thing that I want to share, two of the things that I personally do is, one, you were talking about buying a blazer. If I want to buy a new blazer, I will go buy that blazer, but I'm going to go to my closet and find one that I no longer want or need or like, and I am going to donate that. So I'm going to bring one in, but I'm getting one out. So I'm not getting more, I'm replacing. And sometimes it's even good. You get new styles, new colors, instead of just accumulating more. And then the other thing I do when I go shopping and I find all these things that are calling your attention and you feel the impulse of buying, like you said, all those little tiny things by the register sometimes, is I ask myself, do I really want it? Do I really need it? If I already have 5 pairs of shoes that are this out, do I really need another? I don't. Or do I really need another shirt? I don't. Maybe you will have to ask yourself that you can understand that you don't really need those things, but you just want to buy them because you think you need them, but you don't. So yes, it's our hope and our goal to inspire you to live a less cluttered life, because you're going to also live a life with more freedom.
Yes, and more freedom means more time.
And more happiness.
Yes, and more peace. And more time to spend time with the people that we love, with the cultivating the relationships that matter to us, cultivating ourselves. taking some time for self-development, for learning new skills, reading a book, in a way enriching ourselves more inside of us, not necessarily by the things that we acquire.
Well, Mari, thank you so much, and thank you all for watching. And we are going to see you soon, hopefully with a new project or with a new topic. So if you have any suggestions, send us your comments, send us your suggestions. What would you like to hear? What area of your life or personal development would you like us to talk about? But until then, we are going to say goodbye.
And it has been a pleasure,
Mari,
to work with you.
Yes. Okay, thank you all for
Bye,
watching.
friends.
Bye.